Hi there. This is my English version of a video I already streamed this morning, so my Italian friends can be spared of it because they already listen to me in Italian, and I don't advise you to listen to my personal interpretation of English for the same concepts I discussed today. So this is for my English speaking and very tolerant friends I have on the internet. Um, I am in Milan, so I am in the middle of a red zone, and we are like 3 weeks ahead from the United States, maybe. So we are in our, I think, fifth or sixth. I lost the count of the time of lockdown. Actually, I wasn't affected by the lockdown at all because I work in the same condo where I live. I do most of my work online, and so almost everything went the same in my life, less in my wife's life because she's working from home with my child, so it's not as easy. Sometimes I rent her my studio when she wants to go to work instead of staying at home. Anyway, after like 2 months, I'm seeing and listening on Twitter, on Facebook, or whatever has been said about this pandemic and this virus. I, as an introvert, I enjoyed the lockdown actually. I'm not saying that I'm happy about all the deaths and the sadness and the fear that we live every day, but at my level, as an individual, I'm so grateful because everything is still going very, very well. I wake up every morning, and after 5 minutes, I wake up. I am full of fear and I panic every time I look at the news. And after 10 minutes, I'm panicking and being so fearful. I wash my teeth, I have breakfast, and then my brain realizes that it was just a prediction of a failure, and I've been seeing myself going in an ICU. But actually, I'm not. It's a shiny day, and I can walk to my studio and I can work with my clients. So, on a selfish stance, I'm thriving. That does not mean that I'm not feeling sad, that I am not worried, that I know that people I know are very in a very bad shape and everything seems falling apart. So as an introvert, I was doing fine, and the last thing an introvert wants to do is go in public about something everybody else is talking. So today I'm forcing to do this. Why I'm forcing? Because somehow I think it could be selfish not sharing two thoughts I, I'm having about this pandemic and how the way we are dealing with it in different ways in different countries. But the strange thing on Twitter is it is like a time machine. The same jokes are now in the US that and 1 month ago they were in Italy. The same memes, the same reasoning, the same debate about the logarithmic curves and linear and peak points and so on. So it's strange, and everything has been said, I would say. The most interesting things that have been said are we are not understanding anything about this. It can maybe everything and the contrary of everything. Wear mask, no mask, stay in lockdown, don't stay in lockdown, uh, whatever. Um, Actually, I have a couple of leader I'm following, and one is Nassim Taleb, and so I share most of his view about this pandemic at the system level, at the statistic level. But now I would like to share a couple of thoughts about myself, about single people in this system. We are overwhelmed by messages on Facebook and Instagram and whatever, but we do not understand, I guess, at what level people is saying what is saying. So last night, a couple of nights ago actually, I got this epiphany of an old guy called Gerald Weinberg. This is the guy. Um, he was an IT guy, was a systems guy and a systems engineer, he was the teacher, he worked in IBM. You find him on Wikipedia. And in 1975, he wrote a book called General Systems Thinking. He was a teacher, university teacher, so what he wrote was about teaching ideas, scientific ideas to an audience. So I read about the book, I think in 2014 when he published it again, and then he died in 2018. But I was hit by the concept at the beginning of the book, which are basically concepts that come from epistemology, science, and so they are not Gerald Weinberg ideas, but he was great in summarizing and popularizing them. So I guess many of the English-speaking people that are from the IT or software developer, they know him most. And at the beginning of this book, about which is about general system thinking, where general is key, it's not generic. It's like, how can we think in general terms, so without being attached to particular system, like, I don't know, physics or astronomy or epidemiology, for the sake of it. How can we think in general terms, but thinking well? So there is a part of this book, at the beginning of the book, where he tries to explain the sense of the general system theory, and it says that it boils down to some laws. And the first idea that he discusses is the idea of four different laws. So in this slide, the first three laws are about very complex and large systems, meaning systems made of many elements. And the first law, he cites in the book Erwin Schrödinger, for example, the physic says, the score law of computation says that the experience has shown that unless some simplification can be made, the amount of computation involved increases at least as fast as the square of the number of equations for the given problem. Meaning that even now in 2020, every solution or computation that we want to lead to a solution increases by a square of the number of equations. So let's say you have a system with two elements and you want to see all the cases of interaction, all the equation. You can consider one system, one element of the system, the second one, or both together, and you already have two at the square, so four possible combination. When you have 10 elements, you have 100 and so on. So basically, the amount of calculus that is needed to precisely understand scientific phenomenon is out of reach for science. So what science does all the time is simplify. Mathematics, they simplify. They boils down the problem to to a model, to something which is simpler than reality. And this is always true in every science. You never work with all the molecules or all the atoms or all the neurons or whatever at that level. You choose a subset of the problem. So when you say, for example, the immune system has a numerosity which is out of our ability to be computed fully. So we simplify that, but we simplify it in a way that is practical and scientific, meaning that we can derive some consequences, consistent consequences that we can use. Even Newton, when discovered the universal gravitational law, did the same, and he built on simplification made before him. So he was able to derive a law which is simple and useful, but it's not the whole story, of course, because the whole story cannot be two corps and the law of the attraction between the two corps. There are a lot of other stuff, and in the last century, science obviously discovered more stuff about the Newton laws, for example. So the first idea that Gerald Weinberg puts on the table is everything that is scientific is a simplification because we do not have enough computation power, and we will never have for most of the problems. We are improving, but artificial intelligence or stuff like that is not as good as they try to let us buy. I mean, we buy the idea of artificial intelligence, but it's quite not so powerful at the moment as a computation device for this kind of problems, at least. Second law is the law of probable relative error. Basically, it says that the more elements I have in a system, the less the probable relative error can be, say, can be lower. So if you have 1 million elements and you divide, the error can be something like 1 divided the square root of 1 million, which is much far better than 1 divided the square root of 2, for example. Okay, so the error is bigger when you have few elements. Third law, which is general in science, is that if you have a population, so a system made of millions of billions of elements, the more likely we are to observe values that are close to the predicted average values. Meaning that average has more sense when you have millions of elements. Okay, so these three laws, which are, no big deal for any scientist, are very different from the way we as a single person we think. We do not think as human with these three laws. And actually the system we are in, for example, my system, myself, my environments, my surroundings, my family, my relationship, they are not statistically significant because, I may know, 300, 400 people. I may have a strict relationship with 50, I don't know. My condo is a big one, but we have 400 families, so small village. But that's the maximum for my system, the system I live in, the system I experience my emotion in, like the fear and so on. Everything else, it's on another scale. Okay, so these three laws are for people who want to understand systems from a scientific point of view. And the law basically says, one, you have to simplify reality if you want to be scientific. So it's not reality. If it's science, it's not real. It's simplification of reality. Two, the more elements you have, the less error you may have in your prediction. And so you may want, if you want to understand something at a scientific level, having the larger population possible. So you may think, okay, this is an epidemic. This affects billions of people. So it's perfect. And it's true. It's perfect at the system level in terms of the way we can, make hypotheses and stuff like that. Problem is that there is a fourth law, and now I'm showing you a two-axis graph, but it's the only one. It's not about logarithmic curves or indexes or prediction. It's a qualitative graphic actually, but it was made by Gerald Weinberg in his book. And the strange thing is, in 1975, one of the example he gives to explain the law of medium numbers, the fourth in this slide, he gives the example of an epidemic. It was 1975, and it was just a case study, but it gives an example from biology, from physics. But at a certain point, he talked about epidemics. So it was like, it was a sign when I remembered it. I didn't remember that, but when I read again the book, I saw that was the example specific. So the law of medium numbers talks about medium number systems, meaning system who has a medium number of elements. Now we are going to see what does that mean. But the law says we can expect large fluctuation, irregularities, and discrepancy with any theory that will occur more or less regularly. Meaning, meaning the bottom line is you cannot do a scientific theory on a medium number system. So, okay, one says, okay, why do I care about medium number system given that there are larger fluctuation? I cannot predict very well. I cannot understand in a medium number system if I'm going to be infected, not infected, if my immune system is going to react in which way and so on, because it's too complex. Okay, so if I take a population, let's say, of 1 million individuals, it makes sense talking about the average immune response for those 1 million immune systems. But if I take myself, or myself, my brother, and a couple of other people, and I say, I want to find the law that applies to these four guys, I will experience fluctuation, irregularities, and discrepancies about what I'm looking for a regular response, saying, okay, this is going to be with a lot of confidence the effect on this virus on this specific immune system. Okay, so I have to generalize if I want the laws, but in medium number system I cannot generalize actually. So this is the graphic. This is not a quantitative. It's just like take any kind of scientific problem, any kind of prediction problem, and put on one axis randomness, and on the other axis increasing complexity. If you have a system which is not very complex, let's say as a finite number of elements, for example, one of the simplest, a switch on off. I have two states. I can think of a system of two states, off and on, and that system is very simple, complexity very low, two elements, and then also randomness is very low at this level because I know that I can switch the switch on or off. And in 90% of the cases, I switch on a light or I switch off a light. Then there could be another case, which is if the bulb is broken, I have another case. But if my system is just the switch, it's one off or two off on, off on. Okay, so that's simple. So this is a simple and organized system. Basically, most of machines are like this. They may have many elements, like a car, but the randomness in the system is quite low. I may guess that every morning, almost every morning, I can switch on the engine of my car and it starts because it's a mechanical system. So there is no randomness in it. Okay, so of course, if there is no randomness at all, a system is fully predictable. Any system, no system is completely predictable, but can be predictable most of the time. That's a mechanical system where there is simplicity and organized simplicity. So it's consistent. Then we move up on this slide, on the upper of the slide, and we see that there are systems that Weinberg calls unorganized complexity, that is aggregates, where I have thousands or millions of elements interacting among them, and there the randomness is very high, meaning that even if I take a village in Italy, let's take Codogno, one of the town where the virus spread at the beginning of this pandemic, and I don't know how many inhabitants they have, but if I wanted really predict something real about all the population of that village, I would need to calculate so many interactions that the law of computation kicks in and it says it's difficult. Even if I want just to calculate for all the people realistically, so including everyone in that village, how many of them greets someone else in the morning and who doesn't, or even if, so who got the virus, who doesn't, and so on. It's too complex. But here I have a tool. When a system have millions or thousands or even hundreds in some cases of elements, I can use statistics. Statistics is a way of predicting some kind of probability on a phenomenon. So I can say, okay, given 1,000 people, if I take a sample of this population, or even if I think of the whole population, I can make a guess, a scientific guess about how many of them will be infected, how many of them will be, and so on. Okay, and I can do this because there is randomness in this system, but it's like distributed among the population. So I can extract some law and say in 80% of the case, this virus is not deadly or something like that. So I have a tool there. So at this point, I have a tool when the system is mechanical, because the system in that case is predictable. And I have a tool when the system is complex but unorganized. Millions of people completely. Of course, statistics does not work on reality. Statistics works on samples. So it's a science, but simplify reality. It doesn't really count 1 million interaction for every people with any other one and gives a. It extrapolates from that. Okay, so that's quite plain science. I mean, everybody, any scientist could agree. I think I'm not a scientist, by the way. I'm a coach. I'm a psychologist. So, but I guess that Weinberg was a scientist enough when he made this point. So this leaves us with the number three, the one in the center of the slide, which is organized complexity. That is what we call systems, really systems. Those are called also medium complexity system. That is system who have a certain grade of randomness that prevents them to be mechanics, and a certain grade of complexity that prevents them for being unorganized. So they are organized and they are made of, I don't know, 5, 10, 100, 1,000 elements, but they are not numerous enough to be treated with statistics. So basically what Weinberg is saying is, every time I want to do science, I want to work on aggregates or reduce a system to mechanics. If I don't do that, I cannot work scientifically on a system. I can model a system, I can do different stuff, but I cannot derive some law because of the law of medium numbers. I know that I will have errors, fluctuation, irregularities, and it will be very difficult, even impossible, to derive some kind of law from this. So my first contribute to this pandemic thinking is a rational one. The second one will be an emotional, but this one is a rational one. We as human beings, with our relationship, with our jobs, with our Facebook tweets and so on, we are medium complexity system. And a medium complexity system is not treatable with scientific tools. If you treat a medium complexity system with scientific tools, you reduce it to a mechanic one, or you need statistics, more cases, more samples. But this is not the case of the lay people. I mean, if you are a scientist, okay, that's okay. You are working with numerosity. If you are a mechanic, you work with mechanics. But if you are someone else, someone which is affected, who is affected by this pandemic, you need to understand that you are in a medium complexity system. So it makes perfectly sense that you read on Facebook everything and the contrary of everything, because they are both true. In what sense? I give you an example. There is a meme that goes around from, I think has been going around for years at least. It's a story about an IT guy that his wife or his partner, let's say, or her partner, says, "Hey, please go to the market and buy 1 liter of milk, and if there are eggs, buy 6." If the IT guy comes back with 6 liters of milk, possibly the partner, the wife, the husband could say, "You dump. I told you buy 1 liter of milk, and then if there are 6 eggs, bring them 2. But this sentence, if you read it, can be understood in both ways, and there is no way to demonstrate in a scientific way that one is more correct than the other, because it's a medium complexity system. And in that system, there are a lot of fluctuation. So even if you think that your system is good, and no one with a little bit of brain could think that, a systems engineer could think that you are telling me that there are eggs, then I have to buy 6 liters of milk, which doesn't make sense in the wife husband system that sent you to the store. So this is the same thing about Weinberg makes another example, a visual one. Have you seen for sure those memes where there is, I don't know, a picture of a girl, and if you look well, you see a picture of an old person, and vice versa, and someone can see just the old person, and someone can see just the young person, and at a certain point you see both. Okay, that's the same. Basically, those are two systems, completely valid, but in terms of the observer of the system, if you choose one, you cannot choose the other one, and you start thinking that yours is scientifically correct. What Weinberg says is, because of the laws we saw, any medium complexity system can be scientifically right or wrong, and you don't know because it fluctuates too much. So, in general, if you do not want a scientific approach and you cannot use statistics and you can use mechanics, what you do is just you become naive and you think my reality is better than the other one because it's everybody else, and you start accumulating, say, you start gathering proof that you're right and your husband or wife is wrong about bringing 6 liters of milk instead of 1 liter of milk and 6 eggs. But in general, that's not scientific. And this is what's happening with this pandemic. We go from looking at charts, logarithmic, and we need a plateau. We are looking for the plateau. We need to make prediction at the statistic level. And then we take this prediction at the statistics level and we try to bring them at the mechanic level, finding some kind of cause effect. Like, I wake in the morning and say, okay, in Lombardy this week, there are some ICU who are less full than the week before. And I say, oh, cool, that's good for me. Because if I become ill and I cannot breathe, there will be an ICU. And there were no ICU 2 weeks ago where I could go. And that was a tragedy. I agree. But in terms of it doesn't apply. I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about my immune system. I can assume, I don't know, vitamin C, does it help? It doesn't help? We don't know, basically, because we are in a medium complexity system. So being and living in a medium complexity system has endowed us with a brain which, by design, tries to ignore this reality. Our brain constantly goes like, okay, let's try to simplify this. Okay, let's try to find the cause and effect. If I breathe without a mask as a single, what happens is that I'm getting the virus. Cause effect. Or we try to use statistic. So we say, okay, I am 45, I'm 54 years old. That because I know that 50 people over 50s, they have an X% chance of getting badly ill. So I start worrying about myself because I am in that cohort, let's say. But it's completely created by our brain, and there is no way to know if this is the case. There is my wife's old uncle, which is the perfect paradigm of one at risk of COVID, and he got COVID, and he got any symptom at all. And he was hospitalized before the COVID, and he had serious breathing problems. no COVID-related problem. Doesn't make a statistic because he's one. Okay, but from his point of view, or from my wife's point of view, from me, it says that I am in a medium complex system and I cannot make prediction based on scientific tools. So it doesn't make sense accusing someone else of not being scientific about this when he talks about his life or the life of the relatives. This is different at the statistic level because if you follow Taleb, for example, he says, oh, it's very easy to prevent 90 to 98% of the contagion. It's very simple. Wear everything on your nose and mouth, mask, scarves, whatever. Make all the population do this. Close all the bad Negronis bar. Close all the conferences, especially the one with economists and psychologists, as he says, and I love him, even if I am a psychologist. And stops the airline and long distance transportation. And this way you just reduce 90% chances of, and of course avoid to put people in closed rooms. You do this and that's enough. There is no sense at the statistical level to, insult runners because they put you at risk. This is happening in Italy. Yeah, people yelling to someone else who is running in the woods saying "Stay home." That's completely nonsense on a statistical point of view. But it's not nonsense at the single point of view. Because if I think that I may be infected, I do not want to risk even remotely to be infected. And I react that way. But it's not scientific. It's completely random. And I do not have any tool to make prediction in a medium complexity system. So just to close this part, I just want to say, being in a medium complexity system, it is like being on a boat sailing without any GPS. We do not have a GPS, really, in medium complexity system. And not having a GPS means that you still can navigate, you can move, and you can orientate yourself. Problem is that you cannot orientate with something which is outside. You can just take note of what happens on the boat all the time, and you can keep moving and staying alive. You can do that. But if you start thinking that in order to stay alive navigating on this boat, you need to have a GPS, and you cannot have it, and you invent one GPS, you are just fooling yourself and finding laws where laws are not, because the law is the law of medium numbers. So I'm very grateful to Gerald Weinberg for teaching this and writing this down, because I think it's very difficult to grasp day by day, but it's the most scientific thing I can think of when I try to put myself at work on this virus pandemic stuff. So this was just my 2 cents, actually my first cent, because the second cent is, what can I do instead of having a GPS or faking a GPS when I do not have one? I can use a different way to orientate myself. And the way I can orientate myself in a medium complexity system is called emotions. That makes a big leap, but actually I believe this. Basically, what you can do in order to stay alive and even thrive in a medium complexity system where you cannot make reliable predictions about anything, about your ideal partner, about how you if you will have a job next month, about our health and so on. The way to stay healthy and thrive and flourish is rooted in emotions. Oh, so emotions are, very, 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 very big topic. But, and I do not want to talk about emotions here, even if it's one of my field of expertise. Emotions are not reaction to what happens, but I follow the Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett and the affective neuroscience research that she leads, when she says that emotions are predictions. Basically, you are not afraid because, let's say, let's get this example. I read the newspaper in the morning, and I see that death rate has increased or is stable, and it's not declining. And I start feeling fearful and sad, and I picture myself in an ICU, and I feel like I have to write down my testament, and I feel something about my child, and I feel sorrow and so on. And one may say, you are feeling like that because you read the news as a reaction to the news. But actually, it's not the way our brain works, Dr. Barrett says. Our brain works in a different way. Our brain is like, you are reading this news about death and risk. So my brain, some millisecond before I start feeling fearful, decides that the most appropriate feeling is fear and causes me fear, predicting that I will need it because there is danger. So fear is just the way my brain used to predict what's going to happen. The way after I brush my teeth in the morning or I have breakfast, my brain decides that the prediction was not okay because nothing happened. It was business as usual. And at that point, the brain predicts that I can feel grateful, for example, because I am alive, and I feel, I know, moved because I get how much I love my family. I get and grateful because I am already, and so on. And then I can appreciate that outside there is the sun and so on. But emotions are predictions. So the way to orient yourself in your system, not when there is a virus, but all the time, is, and the way you can thrive and you can stay healthy at the level of your body and your mind, basically is leverage on these predictions, which are the only thing you have in a medium complexity system. It's your GPS without any external reference for GPS, because everyone's emotion is different from anyone else. It's not true that you can really understand someone else's joy, fear, sorrow. Dr. Barrett calls this the affective neorealism. When you think that you know how another human being feel, okay? But this is a side topic. I'm not going there. So we are here and we have emotions. I'm saying that we have emotions in order to stay healthy. And the only thing that we can do in a pandemic is stay healthy, which may include protect yourself from, but it's not the only thing. The other thing is you need to increase your resilience, you need to become more anti-fragile, you need to have your immune system efficient and so on. So how can you do that? And this is the second part of what I wanted to share with you. You need to do that implementing day by day 6 virtues and 10 ingredients. The virtues are, I mean, I'm not lecturing you about virtues. That's a book which leverages on the character strengths interventions, which are a concept from positive psychology. But if you cultivate them day by day, even for a small moment or every day, those are guaranteed, scientifically guaranteed, that they may have an effect, and they have no side effect. So even in a system which is not predictable, like our life, they can have an healthy effect or at, at the worst, no effect. So we should exercise wisdom first. Wisdom is a way to think of life as something that has a sense, even if your sense is not patent, you don't see it. And that's the way it is. If you are a scientist, you want to make sense of something and then you reduce and so on. But if you want to live, you need wisdom, which is basically appreciate the fact that you do not know. And getting along with that and contemplate that. This is wisdom to me. Then you need a little bit of courage. Courage is the thing that you do with a little bit of fear. So it's something that it's out of your comfort zone. There are millions of books about this. But exercise courage every day, which maybe say something to someone which it's not so easy to do, or whatever. Showing up on Facebook or doing a live stream like this with my personal interpretation of English or whatever. Everything you feel as courage is courage. Humanity, feeling that we are part of a species, that we are not isolated. We are humanity. And this is more evident when there is a situation of crisis, but in general, trying to connect every day with our humanity. I'm not talking about 24 hours a day connecting with our humanity. I'm talking about 30 seconds of humanity. Maybe you go on Facebook and see something very human, and you reconnect with that. That's fine. Humanity is important. Justice is important. Justice is not about punishing, it's not about judging. It's about making the right differences. So it's about understanding which boat I'm in and which boat are others, and being clear about that. So it's about make the differences. Not saying stuff that is valid for everyone, not saying we are all in the same boat when you have a minimum wage and someone else doesn't, and so on. This is justice is important. So one act or one thought of justice per day is something that helps to keep the medicine, keep the doctor away, let's say. Temperance. Temperance is important because the opposite of temperance, I think, is illness. There is something that psychiatrists, psychologists, most of them, they agree on this. When someone is rigid, that is, someone is thinking in terms of black, white, true, false, good, evil, and this way of thinking pervades the whole life of someone, that person is probably ill. Mental illness is characterized by rigidity. Temperance is the contrary of the rigidity. Temperance is accepting that the yin and the yang, let's say, they go together. They are not separate. They are not polar. They are together. So being temperate is something that keeps you healthy, basically. Again, cultivate temperance. For example, I don't know, on Facebook, you may connect with someone that express very polar opinion without using a different polar opinion, but somehow, appreciate the nuances, if there are any, in the comment. Anything, any single act of temperance makes you healthier. And then transcendence, which doesn't mean being religious or not, it means everything that is not I. If in my 20 hours I have 30 seconds where I can feel or having the perspective, which is not my ego perspective, which is not I, that's transcendence. And that helps my health with all the other five virtues. So it's not about, starting a cult. It's not about posting spiritual ideas. It's just about trying a way, meditation, yoga, looking at someone who's worse than me, I don't know. But something that says not from the I perspective. It's not about me, it's about someone else or something else. That's transcendence. Feeling that I is not the only perspective. It's very difficult to be fearful when you are transcendent, for example. Okay, so at least it works like that. You fear something when you are in the I position. If you are not in the I position and you are on point of view of the world or outside of yourself, or even thinking like what the world will be when I'm no more here. You know that that thinking that everybody does, I think, when you are younger, like how the world will be when I am dead, and you fantasize about that. That's transcendence, because it take you out and you think of the world without you. Hmm? So that helps your health too. And then we go for positivity ratio. Positivity ratio is a simple formula which was invented, quotes, by Barbara Fredrickson, by the positive psychology movement, Professor Seligman and many others. But Barbara Fredrickson popularized it in a book which is called Positivity. And I'll get you the book in a while. And positivity ratio says it's a law with some scientific evidence that says in any given day you will be able to flourish if the ratio between your positive and negative moments is going to be 3 out of 5 moments. So if you have 5 moments in a day and 3 are positive and 2 are negative, that's a good positivity ratio. What's a bad positivity ratio? For example, if you have 3 positive moments and 0 negative moments, you cannot have 3 divided by 0. That's negative. You possibly have a manic episode if you have only positivity in your day. If you have, on the other side, too much negativity, like you have 3 divided by 10, in that case, you may be depressed or very, very, very sad. But it's completely normal in terms of positivity ratio having a balance between negative and positive. That's the only healthy proposition. If you manage to have a positivity ratio of 3 divided by 2, 3 positive divided by 2 negative per day, of course you can have 100 divided 300. Okay, doesn't matter. You reduce the fraction and you get this ratio. When you get the ratio, if you keep having that for day after day, that increases your ability to develop your potential, to become more of something, more content, more successful, more wise, more transcendent, more of something. And there are, if you read the Barbara Fredrickson book, you can see some of the scientific evidence of this. What we can do in this COVID time in order to stay healthy, which is the only strategy that makes sense in a medium complexity number, which is not prevention, it's just increasing your health, your mental and physical health. You need to exercise positivity ratio. If you are normal, so not mentally ill, possibly you have a positivity ratio of 3 divided by 1. If you increase that in a way that, sorry, you have 3 divided by 2 or 3 divided by 3, positivity ratio of 1 or less. If you manage to have a positivity ratio of 3 divided by 1 negative, you start flourishing. You do not have to attempt to take negative from your life. You need that. I need to wake up every morning with some fear in this period. It's important for my mental health. I need that my emotion fluctuates, meaning that my brain predictions change all over the day and continues to change, maintaining this ratio. This ratio can be achieved with 10 different ingredients. The 10 ingredients that Barbara Fredrickson and his fellows researchers found have an effect, even if you manage to practice them for, 2 weeks, for example. So the 10 ingredients are these. Joy, the first one, meaning beware that joy is not the same for everyone. Emotions are highly individualized. So you need to get in tune with your positivity, experiencing joy and good. We use joy and not happiness or something like that, because one thing that many studies show is that the emotional granularity, meaning how many different labels you can use for your own emotions, are is a good sign of mental health. Say it in other terms, people who are able to say about themselves just I feel good, I feel bad, they are polarized, they have very low emotional granularity, and we can predict that they are more likely to become mentally ill or to suffer, especially in crisis situations. People able to label their different emotional states, even with words that are no sense, have sense just for them. If you call an emotion zabadaba, and it doesn't make sense, it's okay, given that that word indicates a specific state you are in a certain moment. Okay, the more granular you can be, the more health you have. And joy is the first one. So find a way to feel joy for 5 seconds per day, 10 seconds. You do not need to be joyful all the day. Second thing, when you feel joyful, even for a brief moment, do not attempt to explain that joy. Because if you try to explain one of these 10 ingredients, why I feel so joyful or why I feel so XY, that prevents the effect of the positivity on your health. Basically, overthinking about emotions deactivates the benefits of emotions. More, overthinking of emotions, even they are negative, overthinking about fear, overthinking about anger, like, oh, I'm afraid. Oh, why I'm afraid? Yes, I am afraid because there is this virus spreading and so on. This inhibits the good effects of positivity. This is something that comes out from the research too. So, joy, gratitude, whatever gratitude is for you, you can feel grateful and not grateful for everything. It's not something that you do with your brain. It's something that you have to feel. So the instruction here is not write down things you are grateful for. You can also do that, but this is even less. The moment you feel you start to become aware that you may be grateful for something in your day. And when it happens, you just acknowledge that you feel grateful. You say, I feel grateful. And you savor the emotion. And that's it. You don't start explaining, you don't start having a conversation about that. Just try to look for gratitude in your life for 30 seconds per day. Serenity. Serenity is when you are able to look at the situation from an outside point of view and you see the pattern, you see the schema. Even if it's a bad schema, if it is something which is difficult, there is a friend of mine who was friends of Facebook actually. I met her just once at a workshop many years ago. She's called Silvana, and she went through ICU and hospitals for 3-4 weeks this month, and she tried to tell what was happening to her and to her roommates on Facebook. So she took the time to look at herself from the outside and write it down. And that was serenity. It was a painful situation, fearful, full of tears, full of pain. But she conveyed to me a sense of serenity because she was looking at everything was happening as a spectator. So serenity is not about happiness. Serenity is about being able to look at the picture and appreciate that in all the nuances. Interest. Try to keep in your life for, again, 30 seconds, 1 minute, something that stimulates your interest. I'm not spending much of this because I think it's self-explaining. You need to, your brain needs security, sense of predictability, but also a little bit of things that you don't know and you would like to know. Interest serves this purpose. So find a way to be 30 seconds interested per day. Hope. Hope is the emotion that everything will be different but somehow right. And you can have this feeling even if there is no rational about that, because you are in a medium complexity system, and there is no scientific paper that says that there is no hope, and there is no scientific paper that says you are right and rational in hoping something. Hope is not about Hope is something that you can feel, and it's the feeling that somehow in the future, in the near future or in the long-term future, everything or something will change, and will change in a way that you feel positive. That's hope. Pride. Pride is the sense of worthiness. Pride is every time in your day you sense that you are worth of something. And you want to tell yourself, I'm good at this. Even if being good at this is, I don't know, finishing Halo Reach at the legendary level on the Xbox with my son, I had pride with that. And so pride is not something, my country, or it's just the sense of I am worth. And I love the fact that I am worth. So find a way to feel pride for yourself or for someone else, for some 30 seconds per day. By the way, 30 seconds per day per 10 ingredients makes something like 300 seconds. That's enough in one day. You don't have to, overkill with positivity. Amusement. Amusement is when you, it's not just when you are silly or you laugh, it's also when you cry. You know, I finished the fourth series of Money Heist, or the La Carta de Papel on Netflix 3 days ago, and I cried a lot, and that was amusement because I was crying. When you cry at the movie or something, it's something that discharge your energy without any specific goal, which is not other than discharging your energy. So amusement is important. Find 30 seconds of amusement in your day. Inspiration. Inspiration is when something comes in and you picture an idea and something that you can move you to action or to think something, even if then you don't do that. It doesn't work. Inspiration is not becoming successful. Inspiration is like this: you inspire, and when you inspire, what happens is very different from when you expire. When you expire, when you do this, your vagal nerve tells your system that you can relax. When you inspire, you are ready for action. There is something that can happen. And that's the day. Do not follow. It's not necessary that you follow on your inspiration. No follow up. Just get the inspiration, the idea, that image, something that say, and then, if you are compulsive, you can go on Amazon and buy something. It happens all the time to me. I get an inspiration for something, and I say, I want to buy, I don't know, the DJ board, or I don't know, some gadget. That's compulsive behavior. Okay. Inspiration is the first part. When you see something in the future that you can do, and you can start doing something, that's inspiration. Get that sensation, and that's enough. It's not about, there is a lot of, ideas about procrastination, success. I'm a coach, so all the time I get this idea, but actually, inspiration is something that it makes sense by itself. You don't need to follow up your inspiration. You need to have inspiration. This is, for an Italian, is quite unpronounceable. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, in Italian, this is meraviglia. when you have this sense of, you saw something and you see how amazing something is, the world is. Try to get this sense of awe all the time. But if you cannot, try to have it for 30 seconds. The sense that you are alive, and the sense that someone does something very incredible on Facebook. Try to get your 30 seconds of awe all the time, every day. And then, of course, we have love. Love is the sense of good without any strings attached. The sense of appreciation for yourself or for someone else, which is not motivated by anything conscious. Just, you can have love as an attraction, you can have sex, you can have passion, you can have whatever. It's all love. It's something that there is a sense of value, there is a sense of a treasure. Try to find something or someone, yourself, someone else, to love for 30 seconds every day. Feeling love. Not doing something. Just feeling, gee, I love this woman. Usually in my relationship, I tell myself this thing a lot in my mind. And sometimes if I try to tell this to my wife at a certain point, she looks at me and say, what's your agenda? I mean, sometimes she appreciates, but the point is just feeling love, not acting on that. In terms of what we are saying here, staying healthy is a matter of experiences, the feeling of love. And the feeling of love is not loving something which is beautiful. You can love someone who is dying. You can love someone that you miss so much. You can love someone that hates you. That's not the problem. Love is a feeling, and you can tell yourself, okay, now I want you to predict this sensation, this feeling of attachment and wanting and beauty about this person or this object. Your brain will do it. Your brain is capable of feeling love, of predicting love. Okay, those are the 10 ingredients. The secret for using them for good recipes is they have to be heartfelt and unscripted. Also, all these slides are citations from the book of Barbara Fredrickson, so it's not out of my mind. It's her work. So the true gratitude is unscripted. You do not have to elaborate on your gratitude or any other of the nine emotions. You have just to experience them the most spontaneously possible. And the point of this slide is, if you want to experience positivity in your life, even in these times of COVID, that positivity, it does not depend on how you think. We started with Gerald Weinberg and the system thinking, but the system thinking taught us that there is not much scientific thinking we can do in our lives at the medium system level. We need a GPS, and emotions are a GPS. And so it does not depend on how you think. It depends and arises from how you interpret events and ideas as they unfold. And the key word here is as they unfold, not after the fact, not before the fact, just as when they unfold. In that moment, feel what is needed to feel, even if it's negative, because remember, those are the 10 ingredients, but the 10 ingredients may have even negative objects. I can be wise, I can feel wisdom about something that scares me or disgusts me. And this is another very important law. Unexplained positivity lasts longer than positivity we analyze until we fully understand it. The effect, the flourishing effect of positivity in our lives depends on experiencing it not on explaining it. Actually, if you explain positivity, if you explain why you feel love, you depotentiate, you subtract something to the effect instead of adding it. Explaining is overrated in medium complexity system. And in fact, scientists have discovered a lot of time ago this effect called the hedonic treadmill. Basically, it means that on average, our very strong emotion, they fade very fast. Even if they are traumatic, um, big emotional changes soon evaporate, both positive, both negative. And it's called the hedonic treadmill, meaning that you don't need to have peaks. And even if you have peaks, your life is going down to a bottom line and to an average line in terms of mood. When we are not ill, most of the time we are in an average state, which is not too bad and not too good. Okay, if we practice positivity, some of the effects are these on our body. It's like putting our body in a very different soup of biochemicals. And here you have a list, you can read them. It's in Barbara Fredrickson's book, in terms of effect on your cortisol, your effect on your body, blood pressure, colds, better sleep, and whatever you want. And second, even if when you are in a difficult situation, in a traumatic situation, nothing suggests that the resilience comes with emotional disengagement. I say it in another way. The important thing is not feeling fear. The most of the resilience comes from not being fearful of having fear. The importance here is about emotional agility. There is a very famous book about emotional agility, but the idea is simple. The idea is you need to experience the emotions as soon as they come because they are prediction. So it's something that your brain offers to you as its best guess about the situation. So you need not to ignore them. You do not need to act on those emotions. It doesn't always necessary. It's not always necessary, but it's necessary that you are agile about your emotion, and that agility starts with feeling them, not just the good ones, every emotion. Okay, this is the same concept I was trying to convey before, which is unless you are mentally ill, most moments in your life are at least mildly good. Feeling bad is relatively rare, statistically talking. On 24 hours a day or in 1 year, feeling mildly good is more frequent than feeling mildly bad. Okay, and it's called the asymmetry positivity offset. So you do not start from the lowest level. You start from an average, mildly good level, and you want to flourish, increase your positivity. This is another metaphor that Barbara Fredrickson makes and says, usually in this boat that is moving on this medium system, you see everything that is above the waterline. You don't see something which is below, which is the keel. But the keel is something that makes your boat navigate, actually. It's not just the sail, it's not just the tree. Okay. So positivity and the ability of feeling these emotions is the keel of our lives, even if you don't see them. And this is true also for the negative emotions. So negativity, appropriate negative, matters most in our times, and it's our keel. Do not take out negativity from your life. Do not seek negativity, but do not accept what is there and acknowledge the negativity. It's important as the keel in a boat. Okay, this is not very readable at this level, but um, this is just a reference to the fact that you can use mindfulness, for example, to sever the link between negative thoughts and negative emotions. What you want to get rid of are negative thoughts, but you want to keep the negative emotions because they are prediction that your brain faithfully offers to you as his best guess or her best guess about what's coming. So you need to acknowledge your bad negative emotions. Negative thoughts, maybe most of the time you can avoid them, and mindfulness is a way to do this. Sorry for the slide, not very readable. Be aware, as a final warning, that I'm not talking about being positive when you are not. Positive words not matched with positive feelings wash the body in stress hormones. This is scientific result. So we can measure this. If you feel bad and you feel you're angry and you say, "Oh, I'm fine," your cortisol goes up immediately. You go in stress because your brain is predicting fear and you are saying the opposite. This put a stress, a conflict between your brain, inside your brain, and that translates in hormones because the brain says it is like the brain says, is he saying that he's good? But we are fearful. There's a conflict. We got a problem, and cortisol starts increasing because the brain is preparing to dealing with uncertainty. It is like your brain predicts that you need to be sad and you feel sadness. And then you say to yourself or to someone else, "Oh, I'm perfectly fine." And the brain starts thinking, "What's wrong? Maybe my prediction was wrong. Let's raise the cortisol to see how can we solve this situation of crisis." Because it becomes a crisis if you don't match your feeling with what you are really feeling, your words with your feeling. So the technique you can use with all these 10 ingredients is what we call savoring. Savoring as if it was a food. The moment you feel it, you savor it and you appreciate it. So it's a mental habit that you can develop. But again, there is a caveat about timing. It's better if you get several large acts of kindness on a single day each week rather than spread them out across the week. Rather than feeling routine or commonplace, you want to keep your new act of kindness feeling fresh and extraordinary. So don't believe at the idea of routine here. It's not like running 3 or 6 kilometers per day. It's about savoring what you have in the moment. And in general, it's very difficult that you have gratitude all the day at the same time of the day. Okay. So you need intensity and you need to be present about the feelings. So I mean, I do not believe in creating a gratitude routine because it starts becoming detached from what you feel. Our brain is kind of a habit freak, but not so freak and so that every day you can stay the same. Okay, you can feel the same. So you need to develop the ability of savoring what you're feeling in the moment you are savoring it. That moment. So you need to develop the mental habit, not the routine. And finally, and this is also way, say, one of the motives I try to do this video, this in English, is that it's not a solo endeavor. Since the start of this epidemic, I got a lot of friends around the world and colleagues asking how is this going. And I noticed that all my emails and their emails were more like, there was concern. There was a lot of, "How are you doing?" And I felt less alone about this. And in general, flourishing is not something that you do by yourself. It's scientifically correct to say that nobody reaches his or her full potential in isolation. Isolation is always a bad thing. at least for the one isolated. I mean, sometimes for the society is good, but like in this case, in Italy at the moment we are very isolated, and that's not good for our health. Maybe it's good for the system, hoping that they understand something about the system at the statistic level. But in general, isolation is not the way you flourish. So connecting with other people uh, is the key to using those 10 ingredients. And a last thing in this Twitter, Facebook, Instagram era, information can be a positivity killer. So we already said, explaining goodness paradoxically erases it. So the lesson here is that you are best off accepting random acts of kindness as random. Do not try to put this randomness in statistics or in mechanics. Just accept the random acts of kindness, and be open to goodness however it arrives. Acceptance, not analysis. No logarithmic curves if you're not a statistician or a politician or an activist. Practice acceptance, and your positivity will blossom. So thank you. And this is the book I went through. I mean, the ideas came from this book and the one from Gerald Weinberg and some other books. And I wish all of us a lot of luck, a lot of positivity, and thank you for listening to this. Have a good day. Bye bye, guys.